Well guys, no, the title is not clickbait. I actually don't recommend anybody buys the Ryzen 9 7950X 3D, even in 2024. Now, why did I say even, and why am I making this video so late in the life cycle of this CPU, which has been around for a while? Well, because the main issue, which we're gonna talk in a bit, I actually hoped it was gonna be resolved after a few months after launch. But unfortunately, with AMD driver issues and software issues, they are not guaranteed to be resolved. And this is one of those cases, I feel like. So let's get into it. Well, the Ryzen 9 7950X 3D is theoretically the absolute best AMD CPU which is out right now. Now, AMD just announced the Ryzen 9000 series, which of course is one more reason why you should not buy top-of-the-line CPU, since the next gen is right about to come out at the moment. It's gonna be just a few months and it's gonna be distributed. Even time-wise, it would be a bad timing. However, this video hopefully will be helpful even in the future if somebody is considering buying one used for a lower price. And even there, I don't actually recommend buying it if you can find a regular 7950X for the same price or a 7800X 3D for a lower price. The issue starts architecturally, okay? So the 7950X is built with AMD's chiplet designs, where they basically stack CPUs one on top of the other or one on the side of the other to make a bigger CPU. Has been a thing for a while. They started with nodes and then they just stack up the nodes basically. A node has a set amount of maximum cores and then they stack one on top of the other. And if you go higher, you get more nodes with disabled cores. So at the moment, I think the node is 8 cores with hyperthreading. So the 7800X is actually a single node, which makes it a very appealing CPU. How they make this one is they basically stack a 7800X 3D with a 7800 non-X 3D, and they put one on the side of the other, and one will have the 3DV cache stacked on top of it. I don't know if you can picture it, but it's basically two thin layers, which are your CPUs, and then some cache on top of one of the two. They then get, of course, populated with chips on the side, and they put the IHS on top, and that's your CPU. Now, the cores with the X3D cache will make you game better. In case you don't know it, X3D cache basically allows you to put much more cache on a certain CPU, and for the CPU to access it quickly, because AMD developed a way to stack it one on top of the other instead of just displaying it in 2 dimensions, which is why it's called 3D, because it's in 3 dimensions, because it goes on the y-axis towards the top. Here, though, they put it just on 8 cores, and the other 8 cores is a standard CPU, so there are a few issues. The main one being, sometimes, due to Windows scheduler options, the 3DV cache does not get utilized by games. Before all the comments start of people saying that they have this CPU and they fixed it by using some tools in Windows or some special settings, I am very well aware of that. However, if you've done it especially, you know how tricky that is and how much you have to just play it around every time you have a different kind of application you want to do it with. So it is not something I actually recommend to people, and especially since I also sell computer, I cannot imagine just telling a client that they have to open this command line to be able to get their game to run with 3DV cache, because if not, they're gonna get 30% less FPS. I mean, it's something that clashes with the reality of having a user which is not as much tech savvy, and something that's just annoying. Like, even for me, it's just annoying. You have to do it all the time, it's annoying. So you will actually end up in games sometimes not having the 3DV cache, so you're basically buying it for nothing, which is already bad enough, but things get worse when you know that in productivity this CPU actually performs worse than a regular 7950X, because 3DV cache has issues with boost clocks. So if you have 3DV cache, the die is going to be much more voltage sensible and it's going to have limitations on the boost. The algorithm is going to be a bit different, because as you know, these AMD CPUs basically boost based on an algorithm. It's not anymore your CPU runs at 5 gigahertz, your CPU basically runs at whatever it can run at, the higher the better. And that's why on advertisement, they advertise them as going as high as 6 gigahertz, which is just not true very often. But it's because it's the maximum possible frequency in this algorithm that boosts your CPU automatically. But with the X3D, with having half X3D and half not, it's become an issue with voltage delivery and like the way the CPU works. And so basically you end up a lot of times with a CPU performance worse than a 7950X in productivity, and in games it performs worse than a 7900X 3D, because not all the time you can use the extra cores, and when you do, you still have more power to be dissipated. You still have a CPU which has to handle more cores. The extra cores are completely useless for gaming. I mean, you can just see how this thing basically is useless for gaming and it's useless for productivity, so no point in getting it. But if that wasn't enough, we then have another problem, and that is, if you're into tweaking and overclocking, undervolting, as I am, this thing is just like, you have to treat it like an X3D chips. So like you would undervolt a 7800 X3D, which means you don't have the option to do a fixed voltage with a fixed core clock because AMD disabled it. Even if you BIOS mod it, get around it some ways, there are some tricky ways to do it. Again, I am very well aware of it. Still not gonna work as well as it should be. So you end up just having to go with a PBO offset and just having to kind of either test out all the single cores and then set a per core PBO offset. Sorry if it's a bit complicated. I have undervolting guys on the channel, but basically you either end up again having to test every single core because the X3D cores are going to be worse than the non-X3D cores, and so they're going to take less of a negative offset, and so they're going to boost less, which takes like days to fix it, or you will end up just doing an all-core negative offset, okay, which is going to be good, but it's going to be less good than a 7950X, pretty much. So you're going to get less gains in undervolting as well. Since you have all those limitations, sometimes you even get issues with RAM tuning, but even there, I don't consider that a main issue because, as you all know, AMD tops out at 6000 MHz pretty much on the RAM. At the end of the day, even if you don't get a bit lower timings, it's not going to matter at all pretty much. So RAM is not really a problem. But the main problem, again, is you're paying a CPU a lot of money, especially now, like in 2024, if you're watching this video, when it's brand new. If you buy it brand new, you're paying it more than the 7950X and a lot more than 7800X3D, which, by the way, can be had right now on AliExpress for like under 300 bucks, ridiculously cheap. And even if you get this CPU and pay more, you're gonna get worse performance, just overall, than if you had gotten a 7800X3D. I think, all in all, even if you do productivity and you want a game too, and you want the extra cores, I think you should just buy 7950X. Just regular. I think you're gonna be more happy, like, honestly. And if you wanna just game mostly and do some productivity, maybe see if you can make do with just the 8 cores of the 7800X. I think that's my advice. As of today, and in the future, I think my advice will stay the same unless AMD magically fixes all the problems in Windows directly with a management engine driver update or like in the BIOS. This is just my recommendation, is don't buy this chip, and I don't think AMD is actually going to improve it because they have had plenty of time to do it and they haven't done it yet. So I don't see why they would do it now, basically at the end of the life cycle of this CPU pretty much, because the next gen is about to come out. But hey, if you have very different opinions or an experience because you have a CPU of this kind of your own, please drop a comment down below, let me know. I am very open also to be proven wrong. I'd love to actually, because I'd love to use these CPUs more, but I actually tend to just don't recommend them most of the time to my customers, and I think they're not the best. And with that said, maybe drop a like and subscribe for more videos like this, or if you want to see why I don't recommend the 4090 either, I have a dedicated video. And hopefully I will see you guys again. Bye bye.